Okay, so Isabel has gained entrance um, to see. Remember, she has the list of people's names in her pocket, and she wants to deliver them to the army to show them that Mr. Lockton is he and his group are planning on killing General Washington. So she's finally gained the attention of this colonel. All right. The colonel tugged at his coat as he sat down. Well, he set the book on his lap, fingers still marking the place that he had left off reading. I weighed my words before I spoke. I am in a position to trade with you, sir. What kind of trade? My sister and I were wrongfully taken from Rhode Island. I mean to get us back there. You want passage home in exchange for what you know? Yes, I said, lifting my chin a little. Sir? He nodded gravely. If your information is as useful as you think it is, I shall personally look into your case, miss. It was far from a berth on a swift ship, but I had little choice. They planned to kill General Washington. He closed the book, set it on the floor, and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Tell me all. I handed him the list and quickly told him everything I knew. He interrupted a few times with questions and had me repeat the mayor's words. Then he bade me to wait by the dying fire as he left the room, and soon reappeared with 4 other men, all clearly dragged from their beds. I was fighting to stay awake myself, but I repeated the story to the larger assembly of men. A quarrel began instantly as the arguments flying across the room. How do we know Lockton didn't send her with false story? That's just a list of names. Anyone could have written it. I know the mayor's handwriting, and those are dyed-in-the-wool loyalists, every one. I don't believe they've turned a lifeguard. Those men are the finest we have. This is nonsense, and I'm going back to bed. Her story confirms what we've heard from other sources. This from Colonel Regan. He explained that several spies had brought him the same rumor earlier in the day. He walked to the hearth and looked at the glowing embers. All that remains is to describe what to do with this information. Who has this list? A man wearing his uniform coat over his nightshirt waved the paper in the air. Return it to the girl. Why on earth would we do that? He asked. I want her to plant it back where she found it. 'Tis best they believe their plan is still secret. That improves our chances of rounding them up. So that, remember, that list had names of soldiers who were spies, and they were working for General Washington, but they were spies for the king. The man handed the list back to me. I thought for a moment about tossing it on the fire, for it suddenly seemed frightfully dangerous, but I folded it back in my pocket. Do you think you'll be able to return it to his desk? Colonel Regan asked me. Yes, sir, I said. If you hear anything else, anything at all, you come and find me. Do you understand? Yes, sir, I hesitated. And you'll soon help my sister and me get home? His eyes darted to his companions and then back to me. I shall do what is in my power, he promised. Thank you, sir. She'll need the code to get back into camp, said the man in the nightshirt. The new regulations go out at dawn. Agreed. Colonel Regan bent down so that his face was level with mine. Do not tell this code to another soul on pain of death. Do you swear? I swear, I whispered. The code is ad astra. Repeat it, please. Ad astra. I'd never heard such a word, but then again, I'd never spoken a code. 2 words. Ad astra. It's Latin. It means to the stars. Will you be able to remember it? I never forget a thing, sir. So that's her code to get back into the camp. All right, let's see. I think we can read chapter 17. Let's see. So now we're on to Sunday. What with my busy night as a true spy, code word and all, and the heat in the upper gallery of Trinity Church, I fell sound asleep during the sermon the next morning. I woke when the people around me stood. I was so startled that I popped up from the pew and near toppled over the railing. The next 2 days were long and hot as I awaited word from Colonel Regan. Master Lockton did not notice that his list of co-conspirators was a little hand-worn, He was too busy visiting the mayor at his home in Flatbush and spending hours at his warehouse reviewing his accounts. Madame took her meals upstairs. Only Becky was allowed to serve her because of Madame's fear of the demons she claimed inhabited Ruth's body. Becky said Madame sat sighing by the window and shuffling a deck of playing cards over and over again. We did not bother keeping Ruth away from the milk, of course. Instead, we kept one ear open for the thud of Madame's feet on the stairs. When she approached the kitchen, one of us would whisk Ruth down to the cellar. Ruth understood none of this. She did not complain about the egg-sized lump in her head or anything else. After we finished our business in the privy each morning, remember privy's like an outhouse, I took her to check our mystery garden. The green shoots were 2 hands tall, but gave no clue about their identity. Remember, those seeds were from their mother. It was perfect growing weather, especially for flowers and corn and strawberries. It was perfect weather for going home. I practiced the code over and over until I felt it like a prayer in my mouth. Ad astra, ad astra, ad astra. I was desperate to talk to Colonel Regan about our release from the city, but dared not leave Ruth alone in the house with Madame Lockton. The thought of Madame putting Ruth up to auction was a constant torment, like bees darting in and out of my sight, daring me to swat at them. The gossip from the market was fantastical. Becky brought back tales of sea monsters chasing the British fleet and a 2-headed calf born outside Philadelphia that portended all manner of disaster. Folks were prickly and fearful. Loyalist shopkeepers had been tarred and feathered by angry mobs and their shops destroyed. Each day dawned hotter than the one before. Ad astra, ad astra, ad astra. 2 mornings after my meeting with the colonel, a visitor pounded at the kitchen door. I was kneeling on the other side of it, polishing the lock with an oily rag and rotten stone. The noise near gave me apoplexy. Apoplexy. When I opened the door, I was shocked to see not a messenger, but the rotund figure of Mr. Goldbuttons. Instead of wearing a hat or coat, he had on a long cloak draped over his head, and his wig sat askew, meaning off. He stormed past me toward the stairs. "Is your master still abed?" he shouted back at me. "Yes, sir." Goldbuttons dropped his cloak on the floor and ran up the stairs as if his breeches were on fire. A moment later, Master Lockton bellowed like a stuck bell and then thudded heavily across the floor and yelled for Becky. The plot to kill Washington had been uncovered. Oops. I was sent to fetch Madame home, for she had gone to call on a friend. Goldbuttons had vanished by the time we returned. Madame hurried to the library and told me to fetch her ivory fan from her bedchamber, for she was feeling faint from heat and excitement. As she opened the door, I caught a glimpse of the master pacing frantically, his nightcap still on his head. He looked up and saw us. "Thank heavens! There is much to do in no time. The worst has happened, Anne." I started up the stairs to fetch the fan, moving slow as possible to overhear their words. "What is the meaning of this, Elihu?" Madame demanded. "Listen carefully," Lockton interrupted. "The rebels know that I've sent for a cart. We must burn my papers." "Dear God, protect us," Madame prayed. "How much do they know? Wait 1 moment." I took the steps 2 at a time and was near the top when Madame stepped into the hall and pointed at me. "Forget the fan, girl. We need firewood for the library," she said sternly. "Now!" Lockton and Madame were exchanging heated words across his desk by the time I brought in an armload of wood and a few coals from the kitchen in the copper coal carrier. They seemed not to notice as I walked in. "You are abandoning me?" Madame asked. "You'll be safer here." Lockton dumped a folio of papers on his desk and rooted through the mess. "Aunt Seymour isn't leaving, and we have credit with all the merchants." "Your aunt despises me," Madame said. "You must stay to defend our name and our honor." I arranged the wood so that it would not catch quickly, set the hot coals underneath it, leaned forward, and blew gently. "I am guilty, Anne. They won't give me a parole this time, but as soon as the rebels are driven out, I shall return." "What if they arrest me?" Madame asked. "Let me go with you." You must stay to keep them from stealing all that we own. Madame picked the blue china snuff jar off the chest and flung it against the wall. It shattered and left a mark on the plaster. I will not, she shouted. I will not be left at the mercy of our enemies while you slink away. Despite my best intentions, the kindling wood caught hold of a spark and burst into flame. Master Lockton crossed the room to pick up the keys that had been hidden in the jar. He placed them in his pocket then, and without warning he hit Madame with all the force in his arm. She flew into the bookcase, causing several books to tumble to the ground. I almost reached for her, but was afraid to anger Mr. Lockton any further. I command you to stay here, Ian. This is your duty, and you will obey me. He turned to me. The fire is satisfactory. Leave us, he said to me. Yes, sir. As I closed the door, Madame started in again, begging him to take her with him, or at least to let her know where he was going. A carpenter soon arrived and nailed the master into a large crate marked cheese. As the final boards were being put into place, Lockton told Madame that he would first head north, then to Dr. Van Busker's house in Bergen County. 3 men loaded the heavy crate onto a cart driven by a man I had never seen before. Becky tended to Madame's battle wounds with ointment and medicinal wine. I offered to fetch Lady Seymour, but in truth, I planned to run the news of Lockton's escape to the rebels as fast as I could. Madame insisted we all stay in the house with the doors and windows locked. She passed the night burning packets of papers in the fire and demanding gallons of tea and fresh biscuits. Oops, so Master Lockton is being taken out in a crate made of that says cheese on it to disguise him. When the soldiers arrived at dawn to arrest the master, his business papers were all ash and the crate of cheese was long gone. The angry soldiers tore through the library but found nothing save for the shards of the snuff jar. Then they stomped under their boots. They stomped under their boots before they departed. Becky went to market and left me to clean the mess. She returned with a freshly killed hen and a basket full of beet greens. Before Becky could remove her bonnet, Madame shuffled into the kitchen. What news? Madame demanded. Her red eyes perched above dark rings from a sleepless night. A livid purple welt had raised on the left side of her face where Master Lockton had struck her. Most of the bruises on her arms and shoulders were hid under her gown, but she walked stiff and sore as an old crone. Becky gave her the gossip from the market stalls. Conspirators who plotted against the American cause had been arrested all over the city and in several close-by villages. The mayor, two doctors, a shoemaker, a tailor, a chandler, a gunsmith, a drummer, and a fifer were all charged with treason and a host of other offenses. How did they uncover this plot? Madame asked. I picked up the beheaded chicken and carried it to a basin. I held it by the feet so the last of the blood could drain out before I plucked it. Becky hung her hat on its hook and pinned on her apron. One of the conspirators flapped his mouth, and the story poured out. Hickey is his name, a tall Irishman who served in General Washington's Life Guards. Did anyone mention Master Lockton? Only that he was one of them that got away, ma'am. They caught one feller trying to cross the East River. Couldn't row hard enough against the tide. The master is well out of harm's way. Which is more than I can say about myself, Madame muttered, gingerly rubbing the violet bruises on her wrist. So thankfully, they don't even think that Isabel might have been the spy that gave away the secret. They don't even consider her to be a spy. So that's a good thing, thankfully, for Isabel. Okay, so the Lockton's house has changed. Master Lockton is gone, and now Madame is there by herself. Oh boy, that may not be a good thing. Stay tuned.